My given name is Frederick Douglas Forsch. Everybody knows me as Fred. And I began teaching full-time at Tuesday Middle School in 1986 when it opened.
My name is Dr. Susan Paget Harrison, and I first began teaching in 1983 at Cherokee High School, which is the high school I graduated from.
I'm Carolyn Turner, and I started teaching at Ball Ground in 1951 when Cherokee County was very rural.
I retired from Tuesday Middle School after 32 years, and I retired as the course director, which I did all 32 years. And 8 of those years I was also band director.
I retired from education in 2011, and I had gone from teacher to assistant principal to principal of a high school to supervisor in curriculum to director of research and assessment when they finally kicked me out the door.
I was at Hickory Flat when I retired. I went from Ball Ground. I only taught at 2 schools, and that was Hickory Flat and Ball Ground. Then I substituted after my husband only lived a year and a half. So I went back to substituting long-term, job sharing, taught in the classroom for 60 years. Counting my years as a full-time teacher.
That's interesting because I actually hadn't planned on becoming a teacher. I give a lot of credit for me becoming a teacher to my high school band director, Ann Alford, who knew I wanted to pursue a music career, but she also told me I should have a backup, so go ahead and study to be a teacher. I realized later, as I mentioned her in my capstone when I got my master's, that she really had a lot of faith in me that I could be a teacher, and so I really appreciate that. So I decided to be a teacher once the career that I was pursuing wasn't happening. So I said, okay, go teach.
I never started out really thinking I would be a teacher because I was what you would call a career changer. I was in my late 20s and I already married and had some children, and I thought, I really loved history and politics and social studies. So I started, no one in my family had finished college. So I signed up for one class to see if I could pass. And then it took several years, but I finally graduated, and my advisor said, now what are you going to do with this? And I said, And so I started pursuing education courses and becoming a teacher. So I really didn't know how much I would love teaching until I started doing it.
Well, when I graduated from high school, I was 16 years old. So Cherokee County was very rural, and I couldn't see my parents letting me leave far from home to go to Atlanta. I always wanted to be a teacher or a nurse, and I knew I could go to Reinhardt to be a teacher. And I didn't think my parents would let me go to Atlanta to be a nurse at the age of 16.
Oh boy. The first year was interesting. I remember trying to adjust from working in corporate America to becoming a school teacher. I remember once that Randy Martin, my first principal, I used to go out and leave campus to go get lunch because that's what I was accustomed to. I didn't know I was supposed to do that until he told me. I said, oh, I'm sorry. And of course, I also remember, I think that every new teacher has that one student that tends to really make them wonder, should I have done this, or should I have maybe been a greeter at Walmart?
My first year of teaching was pretty scary because I had 4 preparations. I was hired 2 weeks after school started, so everyone else had had time to prepare, And I did not have a classroom. I was what we called a floater because we were so overcrowded. Cherokee was just always growing by leaps and bounds. So I was like a bag lady walking around with all of these things from 100 hall to 600 hall to back to 300 hall. And I also had multiple extracurricular activities assigned, everything from ninth grade cheerleaders to Model UN and mock trial team, and just a lot of things like that. But still, it was hard work, but I just loved it. And saying that I was a teacher, I would just stand a little bit taller. And I know I always got these ridiculous grins on my face because I was so proud of what I was doing.
My first year of teaching, I had 42 first graders. I saw Mr. Gino when he was superintendent. And he came to West Georgia. I was down there. And made a talk. After the talk, I went up on the stage, told him I was Carolyn White and that I needed a job. I was graduating. And I said, I would like to teach in Cherokee County. He looked at me and he said, "You're Miss Alice White's daughter. Of course you've got a job in Cherokee County." That was my interview. And I went to ball ground and Mr. Bill Hasty was my superintendent.
I love Mr. Hasty. He was such a wonderful person.
It was very nice. And the school desks were those that you stood up and it folded up. Well, they were very old. And one day, I hadn't been teaching but just 2 or 3 weeks. One of the seats folded up and a little girl got hurt. And Mr. Hasty came in and said, "We'll get rid of these desks. They're not suitable anymore." And he, that weekend, he got some of the parents together. They took the desk out of the classroom and built tables for the children, got chairs. And I'm sure that the local board, school board did that because I'm sure the county didn't have the money for it.
That's a tough one because I have so many good memories. I know that may sound cliche, but I really did have a lot of great memories. Wow. Of course, I guess all teachers, when they have that moment when the student who seems to be having so much trouble catching on and then the light goes on. I don't know of any in particular, but that happened a number of times over my career, and those are my favorite moments. One moment I do remember, I was so aggravated. I was thinking about giving it up. It was a tough year, and a young lady who was a 7th grader wrote me a letter, and she said, "Mr. Forrest, if you quit now, what about students like me?" Oh God, I love that kid. Now she's a teacher.
Oh, this one's easy. My favorite memory of teaching. I used to go into my classroom and I would say to my students, "I love this job." And I never realized how much it was being processed. And I read a student give an interview in the paper once and said, "Well, I became a teacher because my teacher, Mrs. Paget Harrison, said she loved teaching all the time." And then it all kind of came together for me when I was at the Teacher of the Year banquet as a principal, and we had 44 schools, I think, at that point, and I was there to support my Teacher of the Year from my school. And I looked around the room and realized that of the 44 Teachers of the Year there, 10 had sat in my classroom. And I was just like a soggy mess. I was just thinking, I never knew how great they would turn out. And it was just such a wonderful moment. I mean, you're always proud of the students who become scientists and military people and great business owners, but most importantly, great parents in the community raising good kids. But to see that many people who had gone on to be teachers and to be excellent teachers at one time, that was just like, that was the top of the mountain.
Well, there's a lot of them, but one that was my second or third year teaching, and a mom and dad came in one morning with their little girl, and they said, we've got a problem, we need to talk. And I said, well, let me get the children busy. Well, knowing the little girl, I thought, I don't know what your problem is, because she's very smart, very good. So they said, why do you not love Joe? I said, I do. I said, she's so smart, so quiet, so good. And they said, well, she's coming home crying that you don't love her. So I said, and they said the first day she came home, we just said, oh, Miss Turner loves you. So I know she does, because she had your brother and he loved her. And so they just dismissed it. Well, the next afternoon she came in crying. And they will know what's wrong. She said, Miss Turner doesn't love me. I know she does. Well, they tried to talk to her, and they thought they had it settled. Third day she came home and she was crying, and so they just sat her down and said, well, what is wrong? Does Miss Turner not treat you good? No, she treats me good. Does she fuss at you? No, she doesn't fuss at you. Well, what does she do? Says she loves my friends, and she named 3 or 4, but said she doesn't love me. And I said, well, what does she do for your friends that she doesn't do for you? She says, well, sometimes she lets them stand in the corner, and she never has let me. And I said they thought they would die when she said that. So they came in and said, would you please let her stand in the corner today so that she will know that you love her? I said, she'll be a well-loved child by the end of the day. And when they left, I waited a little while, and so I looked over after a while, and I said, Joe, go stand in the corner. She got up, and she was beaming, grinning from ear to ear. Walked over in that corner and stood there, looked at the class and just smiled. They said that was the happiest kid when she came home that day. But she didn't realize that the ones that had been standing in the corner were standing there because they were talking. But things can be makes your day when. But I couldn't imagine why they came in, because I had no problem with her, but they were just dying laughing because they knew why the others were standing in the corner, but they didn't tell Joe why those stood in the corner. They just wanted her to know that she was loved.
I would advise a first-year teacher to go in with an open mind, understanding that all of that training that you had done is okay, but you're really going to learn how to teach when you're on the job. So my advice would be to keep your expectations at a proper level, because you could easily be disappointed. For me as a middle school teacher, and I've often told middle school teachers this, and as I became a seasoned teacher, is that middle school is different, because you will impact those students. I said, and they will often make you think they're not paying attention to you. They don't miss anything. And I learned that over the years from the notes they would write me or the things they would put in my yearbook. I'm like, I didn't know you were there, but that's what I would advise them, just to be open-minded and know that you're going to learn on the job.
First year teachers are we have learned a lot, ladies and gentlemen, because now you all have mentors and you have the beauty of technology. And I can speak to this because I have a daughter who's been teaching 15 years and a son who's a first-year teacher. And they both still, what they do is so important. He teaches seniors, she teaches freshmen. And I say to them both, you are changing the world. And yes, there are days it's hard. That's why it's called work. It's not called play. It's not vacation. It's called work. But it's a work with such tremendous outcomes in terms of changing the world and changing the life of a child. And when they come to me and they tell these stories about, oh, this great thing happened in my classroom today, or I downloaded this video on the FDIC and they were actually all watching and listening and excited about it. And so I get excited again at their excitement. And when they teach kids how important learning is, and they teach them pieces of information that are going to help them throughout their life. So I tell all those new teachers, hang in there. Yes, there are bad days, but now at the end of my career, I never sit around and go, oh, the paperwork I had back in 1990. I don't think about paperwork. I think about people. I think about colleagues I loved working with. And I think about those shining young faces in front of me. And, to me, that makes it all worth it. So hang in there. And if you hear some surveys, there are surveys on everything from what color shoestring you should wear to, are gingers really discriminated against, all of this kind of stuff. But hang in there, because 50% of doctors do not practice medicine. 50% of lawyers do not practice law. And if you hear someone say 50% of teachers don't stay with it, that is data that doesn't show how many people stepped back to be home with children. One of the reasons many of us loved the profession. It doesn't count people who stayed out for a few years, tried other things, and said, okay, I'm not changing the world here. I'm going to go back into teaching because I loved it. Those people aren't counted. There's so many reasons why we come and go in professions, and that is the research that's not completely done. Most people hang with it. Most people love what they do, and most people would never undo it.
To talk with veteran teachers, I think that was the thing that helped me the most the first year that I taught. And there's a book that all college students should read before they decide to make a teacher, to see if there's, I guess, have the patience or the, and it's the geranium on the windowsill just died, and teacher went on right on teaching. It's more for teachers than for children, to understand how a child feels when it's sitting there.
Wow. I guess, thankfully, I like to walk. I get to do that. Of course, I'm still pastoring, and I can do that more so than I could when I was teaching. I was recently assigned to a church in Atlanta, and I'm doing more with that church than I did with my last church. Another thing that kept me busy is that it seemed like so many different organizations are calling on me to, won't you join us? Won't you join us? I'm thinking, let me retire. I just want to rest, But yes, people keep you busy when they know you're available. And that's okay. I can help people more than I could before, because I'm not tied to the classroom.
Well, those were all the questions I had. Was there anything else you wanted to say?
Oh, wow.
This is for all of our employees, but we really encourage new teachers to watch the videos.
Oh, really? Really? Oh, wow. Well, I don't know. They were pretty good questions. I don't know if I could answer any others. I do know, of course, by teaching 32 years, I saw a lot of changes. And your age, you start to feel your age because some of the things change so much. So that'd be another thing I would advise new teachers, just be prepared for change, because things do. As the society changes, then we change. So things that happened went on when I left the classroom, those things that never happened when I first entered the classroom. So again, keep an open mind as far as the whole teaching profession, everything that goes with it, just be open minded. And never forget what you're there for. You're there for the kids. And I remember Randy Martin told me that when he interviewed me for my first job at teaching, my first and only job. He said, always keep in mind you're there for the kids. And I remember that, even though I don't like kids. Just kidding. No, I love them. No.
Okay, I'm an abject failure at retirement because the way my job was structured, I was allowed to go back and get other degrees and become more educated. So I'm spending my retirement teaching. I'm teaching teachers. I'm teaching teachers at all levels, from masters to EDS to doctoral degrees. I go at different places. I've worked for major universities. I've worked for small private universities. I do consulting and coaching in leadership and in teaching in general. And then I do a lot of volunteer work teaching. So I can say that the bug is not really gone yet. And I'll be one of those people that they kind of, keep showing the right classroom to be in when I'm really old, because I won't leave, because I love what I do.
Travel some now, and I visit friends in the assisted living and the nursing home. That's my main things. But I've enjoyed my retirement, but I've missed teaching. I loved it.